Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today to talk about the solar eclipse at 29 degrees Aries on April 19th, 2023 at 9:12 p.m. Pacific time. This video is based on whole sign Western astrology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the aspects and some of the things that I have found quite intriguing about this particular eclipse. And then I'm going to go through each one of the signs, and I'm going to talk about what house this is going to be in for you and how this might affect you personally. So let's dive right in. This solar eclipse is at 29 degrees 50 minutes of Aries, and it is the second new moon in Aries this month. It's very rare that this would happen, and I believe that this is very connected to Mars's transit in Gemini throughout 2022 and early 2023. Mars is the ruler of this eclipse, and Mars will be the co-ruler of our lunar eclipse on May 5th, 2023 in Scorpio. So as I was thinking about this eclipse and I was looking at the different energies, I was really getting this idea that Mars being the ruler of the eclipse and Mars spending so much time in the house that represents our communications, our thoughts, what we speak, and how we interact with each other, being in Gemini for such a long time, 7 months, very, very unusual. So to me, what I was thinking is this was Mars's opportunity to really become a strategic thinker, to become a knight instead of just a warrior, to represent the higher vibrations of Mars when it comes to bravery and a natural instinct that it comes from the gut. And oftentimes this is or reflected during times of bravery or times of heightened I want to say emergency. This is when we get to see Mars at its best. And now what I think's been going on is that there is starting to be an incorporation in our everyday lives of being aware of our co-creation. And that's why when Mars was traversing through Gemini, Mars was starting to, instead of just running through the Zodiac, sort of like, too quick, I gotta go, Mars was starting to think, if I'm going to get my goals achieved, how do I interact with others? Because I need other people to support those goals. Mars represents athletics and competition. Oftentimes that's with a team. It represents a pioneering and adventurous energy. And while oftentimes they are the leaders in those energies, again, this is working with others or leading others. So to me, rather than Mars just sort of being a brash energy, Mars is now learning how to be inspiring with intention. Mars represents passion and it represents creativity. All the fire signs represent a sense of passion, a sense of adventure, a sense of individuality, and how that individuality interacts with the diversity that this planet has to offer. So as I was thinking about this eclipse, I was also really reflecting on the idea that we had 7 full moons in a row at the 16th degree, which is the Cancerian degree. It's a degree of intuition. It's a degree of nurturing. It's a degree of it's the degree that's ruled by the moon, and the moon, it ebbs and flows, and it's more flexible. So I really am starting to see this correlation between a certain amount of awareness and then taking that awareness and harnessing it into focus, intentional focus. Mars is the co-ruler of Scorpio. And so it has a lot of Plutonian energy in its nature as well as its Martian energy. So we're looking at transformation. We're looking at an ability to be powerful. And in its dark or in its more challenging energies, it can be resentful and it can be angry and it can be dominant and in some ways unfeeling and uncaring, or at least appear that way. But now I'm not thinking that's where Mars is going. I'm thinking that Mars has had a real opportunity to apply what we used to be just conceptual thoughts into the 3D world. Now, why am I focusing on Mars so much rather than talking about the eclipse? Because Mars is having an influence, even though not directly to the sun and the moon, it's having it's making a square to Chiron, which is in Aries. At the time of the eclipse, Mars is at 13 degrees Cancer. And the day of the eclipse, the chart has a Sagittarian rising sign. And that puts Mars in the 8th house of transformation, even though it's in Cancer. So now I'm thinking that Mars is starting to put his head and his heart together. There is a commingling of intellect and intuition. And that's why I think this is so powerful and why I think this eclipse is really a very beneficial eclipse. I'm also going to discuss some fixed stars that this eclipse lands on that I think is very beneficial as well. So, one of the things about this eclipse is it's at 29 degrees and 50 minutes, but I'm going to focus on the 29 right now because the 29 is the Leo degree. To me, it is where the energy of the suit is now at a place where I am becoming very, very masterful at the qualities of the suit, and I'm able to use the qualities of the suit to their highest vibration. It's very much representing a leadership and an understanding of my own need to express myself in order to feel my own value, which makes me see more value in others. Because Leo rules the performer, and the performer is only really validated through the audience. And yet, at the same time, the performer must validate himself in order to be able to stand on the stage. So I'm really seeing this kind of energy of transformation, of a willingness not to villainize nor to victimize, but rather to be more taking what I have garnished, what I have learned as Mars traversed Gemini, and now I'm implementing that. I'm planting the seeds. The sun and the moon are coming together to plant the seeds at this degree where I'm aware of my thoughts, because the 29th degree also reduces down to an 11, which is the master number of thought. Mastering thought is not the removal or the expulsion of negative thoughts. It's more the awareness of an opportunity or a negative thought, and which side of the scale am I going to go to, the negative or the positive. Every thought has two sides. It's first the initial thought, the inspired thought, and then usually there is a resistant energy of the how will I make that happen. And I say it's resistant because you only have your own personal experience to draw from. The universe has a much broader bag to draw from, for lack of a better term. So Mars on the day of the eclipse at 13 degrees Cancer is at the Aryan degree, the Martian degree of bravery, of willingness to use my skills with mastery. I really believe that Mars is becoming the peaceful warrior, a knight of the round table, wanting to come together and work in unison with others to create a better future for the collective. So as Mars is squaring Chiron in Aries at 16 degrees, and the 16th degree again is the Cancerian degree, it also reduces down to a 7, which is what we saw in these full moons that we had, 7 subsequent full moons at the 16th degree. The 7th degree is a Libra degree. representing balance and harmony, a wisdom between up and down, wisdom between dark and light. And here, I think Mars squaring Aries is having an opportunity to have an awareness of an imprinted reaction. I always think a square is sort of this tense moment between something I'm used to doing and a new behavior, a new line of thought, a new belief that I want to implement and integrate in my life, and yet it's not rooted. It takes intention and focus. And this is where I think Mars, while it's in a square, it is also in a sextile to Mercury in Taurus at the 15th degree, which is the Gemini degree. I believe that Mars is becoming aware, is becoming more intentional, is knowing what it's capable of, and yet not always defaulting to aggression or to anger or to resentment, but rather stepping into this more courageous energy. And it takes courage to be a pioneer, to be somebody who's willing to go into the fire and to be, a hero and to emerge victorious through their willingness to step up in leadership for others, because Mercury is stationing to go retrograde 2 days after this eclipse. So it's going to be at this 15th degree, and Mars is going to continue, or Mars is squared to Aries will continue. The sun and the moon will separate, but it will have planted the seeds. It will have conceived a new idea that we're going to take into our future in a much more rooted way. Mars is making this aspect to Mercury, this sextile at the Gemini degree, and we have Mercury conjunct Uranus. Mercury is very cooperative with Uranus, Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury, where Mercury talks about everyday activities, what's going on here in the earth plane, what's happening in the neighborhood, what do I need to get done today. Uranus is out there in space, thinking of futuristically and innovatively, and thinking of more things that are I want to say conceptual, but they're conceptual for the collective. How can we make things better? So here, Uranus is at the 17th degree, which is the Leo degree. So now we have this eclipse at the 29th degree, which is the Leo degree. We have it making, we have Mars, the ruler of the eclipse, making an aspect to not only the mundane way of thinking through Mercury, but also through Uranus. So I feel as if this is really this sort of call to action, to be really brave in our own willingness to co-create and to take accountability for our co-creation. And if for some reason we're experiencing something that feels a little bit challenging, we can have an epiphany or have an awareness that this is the unraveling of an old imprint, while it allows us to implement the new version of ourselves. Hence the square between Mars and Chiron in Aries. I think what's happening with the Mercury and Uranus being conjunct and making the sextile to Mars is giving Mars the idea, I get to create win-win strategies, win-win dynamics for my endeavors and my projects. And in doing so, I can still stand in my leadership. I can still have my boldness and a little bit of my assertion, but this time people are more responsive to it because now I'm aware of giving them the same platform for creation. Now I want to talk a little bit about Mars being conjunct Sirius during this eclipse. Sirius is a fortunate star. It is what's known as the brightest star in our solar system. It has the nature of Mars and Jupiter. It has the color of white and yellow. And I think this is really interesting because to me, when I was doing my research on Sirius, I thought, how divine is that? White is to me the color of divinity, of source energy, or represents that. We think of angelic beings in white garb. Then we see this yellow energy of our power chakra, of our solar plex chakra. So this is really exciting. Also, yellow is this color we associate with the sun and what we associate with the sign of Leo. So here I'm feeling like this fixed star at 14 degrees Cancer is making, is a conjunction with Mars. So really Mars is stepping up his game here. Mars is really becoming into an awareness of an instinctual, intuitive, nurturing energy that actually supports others. The Sirius is known as the dog star. It's known as the son of the sun, meaning it within our galaxy, it is the sun. So we have our sun, and then the Milky Way has its own sun, and that is Sirius, according to my research. Also, it's connected to success, which can sometimes be fleeting. We have wealth, faithfulness, devotion, passion. It can expand resentments, but I don't think so in this case, because I think Mars has become so much more aware of how he shows up in everyday activities. Again, referencing back to his journey through Gemini, which lasted 7 months. So there was a lot of master class within that energy. Those of you that have Sirius in your natal chart, any personal planets, you're very much indicative of your leadership. You're very much sort of a custodian and a guardian of the energies around you, and people will see you that way. There's also a bit of there's a very courageous energy here that can be associated with military leadership. So I think that that's something we might see. We might see, and I want to offer this too, because when we initially think of the military, we really go to the idea of war. But oftentimes there is an opportunity to have talks and to have conversation that averts war. And that's where I'm feeling here is a stronger sense of leadership, especially playing to this Jupiter energy. So, because Jupiter has big thoughts, Jupiter thinks about, ideologies and philosophies. So I think we have a real opportunity here within our own lives to implement these things. And we might even hopefully see some of these things on the world stage. At the time of the eclipse, we also have Saturn at 4 degrees Pisces. Saturn has just started its sojourn through Pisces. And I personally have felt this energy very strongly. And it's been a little challenging. I won't say it hasn't, but at the same time, Saturn has taught me always to look further down the road than what I'm seeing immediately, because Saturn is making a trine to the South Node, which is supporting this Cancer, Mars in Cancer idea, because the 4th degree represents the Cancerian degree. Saturn is in Pisces. That's doubling down on my intuitive skills, which Mars has been honing this whole time. The South Node making a trine to Saturn at 4 degrees Scorpio is having me really dig deeper into my own psychology and start to support myself and get excited and feel the harmony that the trine represents. And Saturn is making a sextile to the North Node. So this version of yourself that you're birthing during this eclipse, this new moon eclipse in the sign of bravery and of courage and of passion, is starting to feel tangible. It's a very supporting influence for surrendering and accepting what has been as it is what it is, and then allowing yourself to rebuild Saturn, a new beginning with the wisdom that you've garnished. This is very much the caterpillar emerging from the cocoon. Now, we also have Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius, and Pluto is slowing to begin its retrograde. It will retrograde, I believe, on May 1st, and it is squaring the eclipse and the nodes. I really want to emphasize that for me, a square is a very tense conversation between an old version, a habitual version, a patterned version of myself, and then the more aware, more conscious, and more intentional version of myself that I have not quite rooted in my behavior or into my thought process yet. There's a certain amount of focus I get to put into the new version of myself, whereas the old version of myself is very well patterned and can sometimes show up reactionary. So as Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius, ruled by Saturn and Uranus, giving me an opportunity to liberate myself from my history as I'm willing to endure the tensions that the square presents, because there's going to be a powerful urge for freedom from following imbalance. There is going to be a desire for transformation, not only within ourselves, but within our world. And oftentimes this feeling for transformation feels as if we have to assert ourselves in an aggressive way. And Mars is teaching us right now that we don't have to assert ourselves in an aggressive way, but to be brave enough to understand that we are partially starting our manifestations up in our heads, but more primarily in our hearts with our belief system, because what we believe comes through our head and then out through our mouth. So this desire for transformation, for liberation from oppressive rules and regulations, and to turn our thought forms into something that is nurturing us as individuals versus hurting us into a certain mentality. We're seeing a lot of, if we think about Mercury and Uranus and the aspects that it's making to Mars, and to the eclipse. Hold on, let me check my notes. Yes, to Mars. There is also, to me, this idea that the media, to what I'm seeing on the internet, a lot of what the information that's coming through is supporting the square and this wanting to integrate more deeply rooted this new version of myself, allowing myself to have the ability to think that if I focus on my own personal wants and desires and take power and control over myself to the point where I'm not expecting perfection, but understanding the ebb and the flow of the square, I'm naturally going to tend to go back to certain thoughts and behaviors. It's not about villainizing them. It's just an awareness to be able to move over here and to support the new version. I really believe that this square for Pluto is shifting our consciousness to support the collective in a more individualistic way that allows for our own expression of love and creativity and for abundance. And rather than villainizing certain sanctions of our population, we're going to start to embrace them. And I think what Mars has been doing, and why Mars is ruling not only this eclipse, but it's ruling the eclipse coming in May, and the eclipse coming in May is triggering an eclipse we had in 2022 when we were on the Scorpio Taurus axis there, because this May eclipse is in Scorpio. So we're going to really see this wanting to dig deep and excavate whatever is not serving us out of our experiences and start to implement things that we think will bring in higher vibrations and more enjoyable experiences. So I think old, antiquated, authoritative, oppressive energies are going to lead to new ways of being. Exploring ourselves and our own imprints has a ripple effect. This is really not about focusing in on the old. It's a point of reference. I often refer to the old as the rear view mirror in the car that I'm driving. We use it as a point of reference when we're backing up or we're making turns so we don't hit something. But we primarily drive through the windshield, which is huge and gives us much sight into the future and the road there. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about the fixed stars that this solar eclipse new moon is on, because I thought this was very interesting. There's one called Alrisha, and there's another called, I think it's called Mirach. Alrisha is at 29 degrees 35 minutes Aries. It's just minutes away from this new moon solar eclipse. Again, solar eclipses bring in fated events. So this is a fated event of assertion, but not assertion through aggression. It's assertion through courage, assertion through a looking to create balance. It is this Alrisha has a 1 degree orb, 1 degree 30 minutes orb. So if you have any of your personal planets at 29 degrees Aries, this is a fortunate star. It has the energy of Mercury and Mars, Mars being primary, Mercury being secondary. And it's also something that is, it supports, if you have personal planets at 29 degrees Aries or within 1 degree, 1.5 degrees Aries, it supports you knowing where you're going and what you want. And this is really an opportunity to step into leadership. This particular star is in the constellation of Pisces, and it's known as the knot or the cord. It's where the two fish come together and are connected. So it's a binding energy and it's a unifying energy. So I think this is really, really powerful for us as we create, because we're all going to experience this eclipse, and our awareness and our focus and intention to plant the seeds that are most important to us will have a very strong harvest 6 months from now. I truly believe that. We also have, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, but I'm guessing. I want to call it Mirach. It's Mirach. It has a 2 degree orb, and it is at 0 degrees 24 minutes Taurus. So this is very, very fortunate. It is it has an energy of Venus with hues of Neptune. This is a yellow star that sits in the girdle of Andromeda. And when I think of the girdle, I think of that as, you know, sort of that that sacral chakra of my wants and desires. The yellow color of this star, again, plays to my solar plex chakra, my power, my ability to create, yellow being the color that represents Leo and the leadership of Leo. This star is very kind. It represents a brilliant mind. It represents beauty and love and devotion and faithfulness, and a connection to the divine that allows for almost a stream of artistic expression that feels as if it comes almost in a channeling energy. People born on this star make friends very easily, and they are supported by other people in their endeavors. So we have a real we've got this eclipse at a very powerful degree. We have it in Aries, the second new moon in a month, and that's unusual within itself to have 2 new moons in the same sign. And we have it on these fixed stars that are supporting our new beliefs, our expanded view of the world. So now let's look at where this eclipse is happening for you. What house is it happening in? Because as you look into what house it is, you're going to know what the environment is. What is the landscape? What is the subject matter that this eclipse is offering me the seeds of new manifestations to put a strong intention. So for our Aries, this is in your first house of self. And this is for Aries rising, moon, sun. And if you have a stellium in Aries, this is very, very powerful for you. There's a huge new beginning coming for you. The first house is the first place the soul experiences the physical. It's almost a dense energy, and that's and I say dense because I feel like the soul is so light when it's out of body that when it first comes within the physical apparatus, it feels heavy to me. So, and I think this is why Mars likes to move, because it has this soul memory of its lightness, and it gets into the body, and it's anxious to get that moving forward. So I think that here we're going to see Mars, the ruling planet of Aries, the ruling planet of not only this eclipse, but the eclipse coming in May, which is a lunar eclipse. So this is really powerful for you to rebirth yourself in the physical, to give yourself permissions to explore and to communicate in the new ways that you have learned and you've been taught as you went through the Gemini energy. And now that you're in the Cancer energy, while normally this may feel a little steamy to you, fire and water make steam, here I really believe that Mars has learned to trust an intuitiveness, and not just the one that comes up in an emergency situation, but the one that comes through almost a slowing down of the self to allow for that divine message to come through. For my Tauruses, this is in your 12th house. I believe for my Taurus risings that this is an opportunity to plant new seeds for your individuality and to allow whatever ancestral imprint you have been operating on to be sort of put on the back burner. I don't believe we really release anything. I think once we've experienced something, it sits somewhere on the imprint of us. And the 12th house represents where we feel unseen. It represents a place of, in some ways, a loss, because that's where we lose the physical body and reemerge into the collective. It's also a very, very creative energy, very dreamy energy. So as we take the idea that Aries is your 12th house, this is an opportunity to be brave in surrendering and accepting whatever historic energies, whatever you've experienced in your life up until now, whether it be bad, good, or indifferent. This is the birthing of a new chapter. And this history is really relegated to the rear view mirror, and an opportunity to only look at it when it's necessary to back up so that you can move forward. I also want to offer this because there's been so much energy going through Taurus's first house, with Uranus being there for such a long time, since 2008. This has really been an opportunity to renovate yourself, to look to your own personal skills, your own voice, your own ability to build something, and to trust that at a deeper level rather than doubting yourself all the time. And I think this is where Uranus may every once in a while kind of give you a jolt, but at the same time, it's trying to move you from maybe getting too stubborn and sitting in something and being a little bit paralyzed in fear. So here, I think this solar eclipse, this new moon, is really giving an opportunity, because it's right on the very beginning of your, well, depending upon, if we look at it in whole sign, which these videos are based on, then it's right at the beginning of your first house. If I were doing a personal reading, I would look at your chart in Placidus. So that would be, it might be a little bit different there. But here, this is really the birth of the self for you. For my Geminis, this eclipse is happening in your 11th house, and I really want to run into my focus on my hopes and my dreams here. The 11th house by nature is an Upachaya house. It matures over time. It's naturally ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is making a favorable aspect to the nodes during this eclipse. So this is a real opportunity to allow yourself to innovate the way you think, how you interact with your networks, to maybe even potentially start to birth yourself on a platform that allows you to innovate and renovate and to rebirth yourself into something that feels exciting and new and authentic to your own creation. Again, we're talking the dominant energy of this eclipse is Mars, and Mars is all about independence, about birthing passions. The challenging thing with Mars is sometimes Mars, is if it doesn't get results right away, Mars will give up. But here, I don't know if I think Mars is still purporting that energy as much as I think as Mars was going through your first house, it was really getting an opportunity to review how I think, to review how I speak, to review how I interact. So this new moon solar eclipse in your 11th house at the master degree of Leo is about birthing a version from your heart, not your head. I mean, you can use your head, but really digging into through your head down to your heart, and then digging into your hopes and your dreams and allowing the universe to work with you so that you can experience maybe even a Uranian event, meaning somewhere something unexpected happens that allows you to open a door that you didn't know was there. And as you walk into that secret room, a lot of things are revealed about your hopes and your dreams and how much closer they are than you may think. All right, now my Cancers. Aries is your 10th house. The 10th house is the most visible house. It's a house of leadership. It's a house of public status. It's a house of career. And so here, I think this is an opportunity for you to birth a new version of yourself. Now, we know Mars is in Cancer right now. So this Mars is in your first house of self. And I want to refer back to the beginning of the video because there's so much energy here with Mars being in Cancer that is supporting a birth of yourself in a new way. And I want to offer it this way because if you have been focused on family, this may be an opportunity to focus on you, but still using the dynamic of family, home, and hearth as a platform. For instance, if you're a new mom, sharing your experience, or if you're a seasoned mom or a seasoned dad, sharing your experience could bring you a sense of, and I'm not sure it would be lasting, but maybe even the reason I say it may not be lasting is because I'm not sure that Cancer always likes to be in the limelight, but there may be an opportunity through this solar eclipse for you to birth something new in your house of public status, which could include a marriage. It could include the birth of a child. It could include the birth of a grandchild. It's always a change of title in some way. So there's something here that's happening that I think is very authentic to the experience you want to have. And I think that as Mars is going through your first house, this would be an act of bravery for you to implement these things. All right, Leo, Aries is your 9th house, and the 9th house is naturally ruled by Jupiter. We see a lot of Jupiter's influence on this. I don't know if you can hear my stomach growling like crazy, and I don't know why it is. Maybe if I take a sip of my tea, it'll stop. I'm so sorry. So Leo, this is in the 9th house. I want to offer it this way. This eclipse is at the Leo degree. Leo is a fixed sign, and in doing so, doesn't like a lot of change. And yet this eclipse doesn't offer necessarily change in the outer world, but maybe change on how you believe about yourself. The real permissions you've given yourself for your heart to be courageous, for you to look to yourself as a leader versus potentially looking to others to lead you. I feel like when I'm looking at this 9th house, it feels as if suddenly I'm giving birth to a version of myself, an independence within myself that actually could potentially serve the passions of my heart. And part of those passions could be romance, could be the conception of children, depending upon if that's a chapter you want. And if up until now, some of the things you've wanted to birth have not taken place, it could be because the stars were not aligned for your success. So as you've walked through these epiphanies, through these full moons at the 16th degree, which were illuminating how we nurture ourselves, how we focus on things. The nature of Aries is fiery and can be very, very resentful in its very lowest dynamic. And so that's a polarizing energy. People don't want to be around that. So I believe that if there has been something that's been tugging at you, where if you felt unresolved in some area, this new moon solar eclipse gives you an opportunity to take your ruling planet, the sun, and to marry it to your intuitive heart, and to allow that birth to then work in coordination with the universe and the divine powers that be, because the 9th house rules the connection to the angelic realm, rules the connection to so much that we cannot see. So this is really about being brave and courageous, and also not necessarily looking for immediate results or looking for something in the tangible 3D world that supports this new concept, this new ideology, this new version of yourself, because I don't know that this is going to show up right away. I feel like a lot of us have this journey of faith and of tenacity, which is why I think Saturn's aspects to the nodes during this eclipse are so important, because it's giving us an opportunity to build from a more higher vibrational level of what Saturn has to offer. It's making good aspects to both the north and south node, favorable aspects. Now, Pluto, making the challenging aspects to the new moon, is really digging deep into our psychology. And if we're saying, yeah, but I can't until, Pluto's going to feel very disruptive at this time. So I think that this is overall a very fortuitous energy. Again, this solar eclipse is on some very fortunate stars, fixed stars, and they support your energy. Okay, Virgo, this Aries new moon eclipse is in new moon solar eclipse is in, oh, a hummingbird just flew out onto my patio. Oh, that makes me very excited for you, because the 8th house is the house of transformation. Now, this is Aries for you, but I feel like that hummingbird represents joy. And it's also an interesting bird because the bird itself is able to go forward, backward, sideways. It's like a little helicopter. And so I feel like maybe part of your transformation, and me seeing this little bird right now, is about you allowing for yourself to be as important as your service is to others. That there is a wisdom to the idea of this solar eclipse being at the Leo degree, and that playtime serves a bigger purpose. It's not frivolous. It's not luxury. It's actually a recipe for success. I feel as if Mercury, your ruling planet, is playing a lot of good games in this eclipse. And I will refer back to the beginning of the video for because the Mercury is about to go retrograde, and that retrograde is all about reflection. It's all about review. It's about reestablishing yourself. And this new moon is about planting seeds for a new birth. So I feel as if there is a big transformation coming for you, where you see the wisdom of your own brave, courageous, independent action to serve your own needs will also serve the collective. And I want to offer this too, because some of my Virgos may actually start or implement new ways to make money. You may find, you're on TikTok and you do a video and out of nowhere it goes viral, and you get very empowered by that experience. And so that supports you wanting to produce more content. I very much want to offer that some sort of independent and passionate creative endeavor, and your Virgonian way of being able to stick to the process and do what you need to do to get your goals achieved is very probable right now. And the square that this eclipse has to Pluto may have a little bit of a fight with your head about, your obligations to others. But as you pull yourself into this higher vibration of what's being offered here, you will see the wisdom of allowing your independence actually does serve others. Okay, Libra, Aries is your 7th house. And so this is really offering a new sense of harmony and peace. And, it's interesting to think Libra is the sign of partnership. And then you have this hot 7th house, right? I'm an Aries rising with a Libra sun, so I know this axis very well. And the reason I say that is because I feel as if having an Aries 7th house is really about discovering the me within the we. And now we have this, this 2 new moons in your 7th house of partnership, supporting your individuality, but not to the exclusion of your partnership. It brings things into more balance for me. I also feel like with this being at that 29th degree, that Leo degree, that degree of that reduces down to an 11, which is the master number of thought. And when we master our thought, we realize that we're not mastering and, wrestling our thoughts to the ground, but really being aware of our focus. So even when we're wobbling, it's not really a big deal, as long as we keep moving towards what feels better, what feels harmonious, what feels fair, what feels like it's warm and fuzzy and cozy and Venusian. Because I think this is where by the time we get to the Scorpio lunar eclipse, I think Libra will have had some sort of epiphany or revelation or awareness that as you serve yourself, as you express your own individuality, the partnerships in your life, the people in your life, they start to respond to you differently. And it feels good to me. It feels like, wow, I've never really had the spotlight on myself. And I'm not saying that Libras don't have the spotlight on themselves, but here with this Aries new moon, it feels different this time. It feels like Libra's more able to receive that spotlight in a way that isn't sort of trying to play it down and isn't playing to any of the more vain dynamics of Venus, because she can be vain. Okay, Scorpio. Aries is your 6th house. And I really want to emphasize that, Mars is your co-ruler. Both your ruling planets have a lot of dynamics within this eclipse. And you were on the eclipse axis last year. And we have one more lunar eclipse in Scorpio coming up in May 5th. So this is super powerful for you. And I believe what's happening is, of course, the 6th house rules our employment. It rules our acts of service. It rules our health. It rules our pets. Now I want to offer it this way, because I think that while Scorpio is a very savory and deep and psychological, I think you can be quite an uplifter. But this eclipse in Aries is speaking to some sort of bravery about really looking at if you're taking care of you. I want to offer it this way, because it's not as if you don't take care of yourself, but sometimes as humans, we think, okay, I'm going to do this for now, and then I'll take care of myself later. Or I'm going to save up now and not allow myself any sort of ease. I'm kind of coming to the mental health aspect of this right now, this 6th house, as if there's the potential for Scorpio to integrate maybe a more challenging story that's enslaved you, some story you've been telling your whole life. If I don't do this for others, I won't be loved. If I don't do this, this will not happen. And I believe this Aries solar eclipse and this 2nd new moon has been planting the seeds for you to individualize yourself and be brave and not be enslaved to a psychological imprint that doesn't serve your happiness, but rather serves somebody else's sense of comfort or sense of ease. I really, oftentimes people don't realize that we enter into partnerships on a platform that isn't quite what we think it is. Sometimes we enter into relationships with people and we see things about them, but they're making us feel so good about ourselves that we overlook those things. And this is one of the things about Saturn going into Pisces that is really going to be illuminated as he journeys through Pisces, where we tell ourselves stories and that really don't support our happiness. So here, I think the Aries eclipse is going to really release your mind from something that has entrapped it into a place that is not serving you, but rather you keep thinking if you are of enough service to another, that you'll somehow create an equality. And I don't know that the other party or the other entity or the other dynamic will want that. It's kind of like, when somebody's doing stuff for you, you don't want them to stop doing that. So if they don't take care of themselves, some people will just let you continue to give and give and give. I think here, Scorpio, this is where you start to turn things around, and where these eclipses have been supporting you not to villainize yourself for that and not to victimize yourself to other people, but just to stand in this very strong place where Pluto says, my heart is important, and what my heart wants is as valid as anything. And when I fill my heart, I'm actually a better service and more efficient service to others. All right, Sagittarius, I'm excited. This is your 5th house of creativity, of passion, of romance, of fun and frivolity, and of I just always think of it like a comedy club, going to a comedy club and getting a good laugh. Speaking of a comedy club, I watched the funniest Jimmy Fallon. No, it was actually Jimmy Kimmel thing yesterday. But anyway, I digress, because I want to offer it this way. I think that this is where Sagittarius really starts to plant the seeds of something that feels as if you're going into new territory, but with a more brave heart, with a heart that's saying, you know what? If I can think it, and if I can imagine it, and if I can conceive it, I can be it. I can travel there. I have the wings to fly. You naturally rule expansion. You naturally rule diversity and new experiences and new things and this sort of broader view of the world. I always think that the 9th and the 11th house are much more cooperative than we talk about, because they're very much focused on what can be and what is possible. And so here, I think that this Aries eclipse is going to kind of infuse this new sense of hope and faith. And I think that the stars that this eclipse are on are like this, really giving you an opportunity to take this master energy, this energy of expertise. And I don't know if the creativity is the expertise, but your willingness to go into foreign territory is. So as you keep allowing yourself this brave energy of moving forward, I believe what you're going to start to see in 6 months is some sort of tangible 3D. I can either touch it, smell it, or feel it in my world. Now, let's also say, what if you want to have a baby? What if you want to conceive children? The 5th house is the house of the conception of children. If for some reason you've been challenged by that endeavor, don't worry, because while we give birth to little humans, we very much also are giving life to a soul's journey. And if the soul is indeed picking you as their parents, it may look at the astrological dynamics and say, I'm not sure I want to come in right now. Let me wait 6 months. Let me wait a year. Let me wait till, blah, 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 whatever the soul's intention is, because each point on that natal chart is an opportunity in some ways, even if it seems challenging, especially those squares. So my point is here, Sagittarius, keep your eye on the big prize. Stay in that expansive energy. Your ruling planet is having a lot of influence on these fixed stars where this eclipse is happening. So if you want to have children, it might be a good time to start that endeavor, and to endeavor it through fun, not through trying. To throw out all those, measuring sticks and all those things, and just go have fun, laugh, have relations, and then let the soul do what it does, and it will come through. And if for some reason that birthing of something is not a physical human, but it is a creative idea, I still think that sometimes the stars will put us in a holding pattern so that we can dig deeper into the psychological imprint and platform with which we build things on. Because sometimes some of our good ideas are good, but we are giving up our power at the same time. And I think this is part of why Aries is such a strong, powerful energy, and why it co-rules, or Mars co-rules Scorpio. It's about being brave, about my true individuality. Okay. Capricorn. Aries is your 4th house. This is the 4th house of home, hearth, and self-nurturing, of intuition. It's all things ruled by Cancer. But here it's in that independent, brave energy. Oftentimes I think that when I see Capricorn rising with planets in their 4th house, there's strong sense of homeland, and of being a patriot, and of being someone who is willing to defend their own home and their honor and their country. So here, I think what's going to happen, and what I have been feeling for Capricorn ever since Pluto started transiting your 1st house, is that you've been rewriting yourself. You've been taking the higher vibrations of Saturn. And I'll tell you, Saturn has been kicking my you-know-what lately. But I also understand a rhythm with Saturn. And when Saturn entered Pisces, it really called upon me to dig deep into how I was building myself and my own sense of belief in myself, and how much I was hanging on or have been hanging on to an imprinted version that my family left upon me. And even though I've individualized myself a lot from that, I still know that there are, you can only erase the chalkboard so much, but the previous writings on it are still there. So I feel like this Aries solar new moon eclipse at the 29th degree is giving you an opportunity to do what you do naturally, which is to stand in leadership, to accept and to surrender to that which has been, and then allow yourself the privilege of rebuilding what you want in the way of what makes you feel at home, nurtured, accepted within a family group, within being a valued member, not just for the service you provide and not just for the security you provide, but for your home, like the home of your heart, for your loyalty and for the trust that you've shown. So I'm very excited for this. And again, we are planting seeds at this eclipse. We are coming to an opportunity to really, at a fork in the road. Again, this is a square. Pluto is squaring this eclipse. And will I default back to what I'm patterned into, or will I actually step into a vibration to trust those that I have been nurturing, those that I have been supporting in my home, to now give me an even exchange of energy? All right, Aquarius. Aries is your third house. This is very powerful for you, really individualizing yourself and creating a network. And I want to offer it this way, because the third house, while it naturally represents Gemini, Aquarius rules the World Wide Web. So there's something about this that makes me feel as if Aquarius could potentially birth themselves on either new platforms, or cross-pollinate your platforms, or give life to your own self-expression, your own thoughts, your own opinions, and what you want to be via our World Wide Web and the evolutions of our World Wide Web. I am convinced there are platforms that are being developed and created right now that once birthed will again change our world the way that cell phones changed our world back in the 90s. So here, I think, allowing for your innovation, doubling down on your creativity from an individualistic way of being, and then trusting that even though others may not see your vision right now, the audience will catch up eventually. But for now, I think this is really about honing in your thoughts and being aware of when sometimes you might feel like you're so far in the future that you're not part of the pack here. But I want to offer it this way, because leaders don't stand in the middle of the herd. They stand at the pinnacle. And there's really only one person up there. So when you stand as a leader in your life, sometimes it's not easy, because we want to feel the support of those behind us. But sometimes we have to go with the ebb and the flow. So a little bit of patience there with yourself as you're taken to a new level of leadership, a new level of individuality, a new level of influence to those that are important to you, and to those that you may not know personally, but you have a passion for via uplifting the world experience, the global experience. All right. Now, finally, our Pisces. Aries is your second house. Here, I think this is a real opportunity, because Saturn is traversing your first house, to sort of double down on the idea that you are a valuable and compassionate and loving individual. Your skills are amazing. And I think Aries, this energy in Aries being your second house, and this eclipse is really asking you to bet on yourself. If you have a singing voice, any of your skills, any of your creativity, Pisces rules so much creativity, from being a good orator through poetry, being a photographer or a filmographer, or a filmmaker, I should say, being a dancer, a ballerina. There's so many different types of creativity that Pisces encompasses. It's also very intuitive and ancestral, very connected and compassionate. And so here, infusing a little bit of Aries energy feels good for you. Feels as if this, we've got this aspect on this Alrisha is a fixed star that is in the Piscean constellation. It's representing that this eclipse is on a point where the two fish come together and are tied in a knot, creating unity. And here, I want to create unity with your skills and your voice and the viability of that. And as you allow yourself to birth that individually, you'll start to experience bounty coming from it, material resources coming in, a sense of yourself that doesn't feel so vulnerable to the changing tides, a sense of yourself that feels more intentional about where you want to swim and what waters you want to swim in. And I think this is where Saturn is really loving on you. I know it's a little bit rough at first because Saturn can really feel like a wet blanket on our illusions, or being overly optimistic about people and situations that have repeatedly proven a different dynamic. But I also think that this is where Saturn and planets like Pluto are our friends. As we walk through our initial disappointment, then we can step into our power and understand that the human experience is riddled with elations and disappointments. And sometimes what feels like failure is really just another stepping stone to success. And the more we have challenged, sometimes the more resources we actually have to believe in ourselves, because an effortless journey is a journey of unsureness in some way, because if something slips, we don't know how we're going to recalibrate. So here, I believe that this not only second new moon in your second house is giving you an opportunity to come together with your own hopes and dreams, your own skills, your own intuitive body and dreams, and to be brave in allowing that which you might have been codependent or enabling or overly compassionate about, or even just ran straight up escaped from, let that lie, surrender to that, and then keep your eye on the prize of, as you nurture yourself, the dreams and the hopes that you have for those that you love are more viable. They're more, oh my goodness, I'm losing my words right now. I want to say that as they witness you giving yourself this permission, that is the inspiration that you offer them. That is the gift you offer them. And that is the invitation. So, all right, that's it for this eclipse. Thank you so much for watching. Again, my name is Teri Hunter. I am an intuitive astrologer. Every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific time, we do a live, I say we because we have a community that comes together, and we do angel readings for the week ahead as we look at the transits. So I hope you'll join me. Please like, please subscribe. And if you'd like to get an astrology or an angel reading from me, I am available, and just send me an email and I'll send you information and rates. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope you'll come back. Please like, please subscribe, please share, and please comment. I'll see you soon. Peace out.